Greetings from the Truth Lighthouse Center located at the FTC World Headquarters. Welcome back for the third episode dealing with the background of For This Cause. After our founding in the early years, as previously discussed, FTC went through a rather difficult time. Honestly, it seemed like we had run our course and we were about to dissolve. Laura Westbrook had been fighting an intense battle with cancer. Even though she was an amazing witness to the people that were trying to be a blessing to her and trying to help her physically as doctors, nurses, and whatnot, she was constantly witnessing out to them about the love of God, made an impact in their life. But eventually, she made her transition to heaven. And of course, that put a great burden on Roy in raising their two children on his own. And so he stepped down and from his position for this cause, understandably. The Wasilowskis and I carried on for a while. We did our best, but they too had two daughters that needed more attention as they were getting to school age, and they were working on growing their church and had their own business. And so understandably, they had let me know that time was coming for them to step down. It just gave me advance notice so I could do what needed to be done. And it wasn't just them, but I was also going through my own dilemma. For several years, I just, bit the bullet. I was being the single adult thinking that the Lord's going to come, the Lord's going to come. And after so many years, the loneliness triggered my agreement to one of my friends who had previously been trying to get to introduce me to a lady in his church. They were in another state, and so I yielded. We met, and long story short, less than a year into our marriage, she felt like she needed to get a little break away from me in California and went back to what she still considered home. And not long later, she told me she was starting the process for divorce. It was quite a shock for me, having been teaching all these workshops and people saying how much it helped them, and knowing that the problems we were having seemed rather small, if you will, compared to some of the things that other people have gone through and overcome. I was just kind of surprised that divorce was the quick answer. So I got some wise advice from my friend Tim, and my flesh did not want to agree, but eventually the thoughts continuing to echo through my mind got down into my heart. And he said something to the extent of, if it did come to an end, would I be able to say that I did everything in my power within the will of God to save the marriage? That being the case, I decided to go back to her state and to her church and meet with her pastor for some marital counseling and see if things could be resolved. And eventually, several months later, it was decided that the marriage was redeemable, and that the only thing that needed to take place was I needed to yield to several ultimatums that were made, namely that I would leave my home and my ministry and my business and move there and minister in their church and pick up over there. There were several other things on the list. I won't go into those, and I was actually quite surprised that they were on the list in order to avoid divorce, but I guess they were important enough to them. Needless to say, I counseled with my pastor and others and came to the conclusion that most likely, if I did yield to the demands, that in not too far in the future, there'd be another list of demands and the same thing would take place. And if I didn't continue to meet the needs or the requests, then the marriage would end. So I moved back to California and she moved forward with the divorce. It just seemed like the cause was no longer being fulfilled. At that time, students had quit applying for the scholarships that we were offering. I was no longer going to the camp, and therefore the youth program and the awards weren't taking place. I didn't anticipate pastors would be as interested in having me come and do the workshops, knowing that I was either going through or afterwards having gone through divorce. So, losing the supporting cast also, I just decided I would call the attorney that helped me form the organization and we'd start the process to dissolve. But in spite of those being a few really hard years before the dissolution took place, where it's final, we got it started, but before it was final, I moved back to my old hometown of Placerville, California, and I started coaching at my high school that I graduated from. I figured my coaches were significant role models in my life, in that maybe I could do that for some of the youth today, that I could give back of myself to others. And so before we completed the dissolution, the decision was made to not dissolve. I had a couple friends in the church that decided they would help me. They would take over those positions on the board and leadership. And so we went with it. Shalene Kelly was one of them. She and I met many years ago when I was first going to the youth camp back in the early days, early 90s. And then Pat McAtee also joining. He and I became real good friends as soon as I moved back to Placerville. Both of them was going to the church at that time where I started going to when I came back. Pat and his wife had already been involved in ministering to married couples, were actively doing so. So they kind of fit in, saw the need, and were helpful there. Shalene was a Bible school graduate, so felt the need of Bible school program, and she was also a world traveler, so the work we were doing overseas appealed also. So it's just the group connected well together, and so we kept it going for first several years. It was pretty much just the overseas Bible school program that we were doing. When we got to the 10-year mark, we were up to $50,000 in giving, which pretty much matched what we did the first 5 years. And then a few years later after that, my stepdaughter Nindy, Norma's daughter, joined the leadership of the organization, and she took over running our Facebook page for us. Up to that point, we had very few posts randomly made and very few people following us. And shortly after she got involved, we had posts taking place regularly, and in a short amount of time, our followers grew to over 200, which might not be millions that other people have, but it was far more than what we had. So she was doing a great impact for us. After our 14th year of giving to the Overseas Bible School, we were getting close to $80,000 in our giving, which was a little bit ahead of where we were the first 10 years. And I put out an idea to the group, and they agreed that for our 15-year anniversary, we would go even bigger than what we normally did in order to reach and or exceed the $100,000 mark in total giving to overseas Bible schools. And that's when I met missionary Joseph Burr. Up to this point in time, our giving had been just random to whatever need was presented from headquarters. We would consider them, and whichever one was best we would give to. And at that point in time, South America had received the least amount from us. And considering it was the only continent other than Antarctica that I had not been to, I decided that that's where we would target. And so they put me in contact with Area Burr because he was an area coordinator there in South America. He was over several countries, and once I contacted him, I could tell him what we wanted to do, and he would help us find a project that would work best for us. At first, we looked at one in Peru. He thought it might be a possibility. After a few weeks of researching it, it just wasn't going to work out for us. So I asked if there was anything else, and that's when he told us about the New Heights School in Lambaréné, Paraguay. It was a private school. At that time, they were teaching kindergarten through ninth grade, and they were wanting, the vision was to be able to teach all the way through grade 12. Sister Loretta, Missionary Burr's wife, was the director of the school, and they were pushing forward with this, but the requirement upon the school was you have to build 3 new classrooms before they would grant them permission to do so. They had begun the project, which would cost approximately $30,000, with a donation of $10,000 from a church in Canada. And so they were short by $20,000, which just happened to be the amount that we were targeting to give. And the school there fell right in line with our mission, that we wanted to support education, Christian education, which this school was doing. And it just seemed like it was a fit from the very beginning. In July of 2016, I arrived in Asunción, Paraguay, and got to meet the 200 plus children that were going to the school, the excellent staff that was teaching there, and the construction, to be able to see it while it was going on. Shortly after a little 4th of July celebration with the whole Burr family, I got to go with Missionary Burr to Bolivia for a family conference that was taking place there. He was the overseer, and we were going to Cochabamba for that conference. As we entered the country, I got a rather unique experience. I'm not sure if there was anything else besides just my American passport that triggered the problem, but I was being told I was going to be turned around and have to go back to where I came from. Until there was another review done, and it was determined they simply needed just one more picture from me, that of Benjamin Franklin, if you understand what I mean. It was a great trip after that. So upon our return to Lambaréné, I got to meet up with Brother Gus and share a room in a dorm at the church with him. He was a teacher from America, spending his break going down and teaching in New Heights School, the children English there. So we had a great time together, and he had a better grasp of Spanish than I did, I could tell you that, and English as well. But he would go and teach class. I would go and do whatever I could do to help. Painting, sweeping, taking out trash, anything that I could do to help was considered an honor. The last week that I was there, Nindy arrived, and she got to be a part of helping. We got to paint some desks and do some stuff there that helped them out. But the big thing was on July 29th, 2016, they held a special service dedicating the new wing in memory of Norma Pimentel and a lady from the church in Canada as a memorial to her as well. We were so impressed with the work of the Burrs and everyone involved in making New Heights an incredible success that we brought back our scholarship program. Each year after that, we donated $1,000 to cover the costs of a full year's tuition for 3 elementary school students, 1 middle school student, and 1 high school student. That's 5 students for the whole year, $1,000 for their tuition. It was truly a blessing to be a part of the work there. We made some great friendships. Some have lasted to this day. And I told them at that time I would do my best to go back for the first graduation. And thankfully I was able to be a part of that in December 2019 as a first class graduated from New Heights School. In early 2020, Nindy had to step down from her position, but just recently we've got a 4th member back. Pete Cavigan came to help us in the much needed position of a scribe, or in the legal terms, the corporate secretary. But he's been involved with us now for over a year, and appreciate him much. in early 2024, we talked about the incredible progress that was made at New Heights over this last several years since having been there. Anthony, the missionary Burr's son, became the director of the school, and they were no longer dependent upon donations from North America to cover tuitions. The expansion had continued to grow in the building and the grounds, and their staff began to grow, where they were bringing in more capable, higher-powered teachers, and therefore helping to grow their reputation of a solid private school. The only thing that they didn't have that the top-rated private schools in the area did have was a computer lab. And so we made a donation in 2024 to be able to help provide that need. And after that, they had one goal: to multiply, to reproduce their school in another area. To which I say, let it be, Lord Jesus. They've done an incredible job, and we look forward to seeing the great news of their continuing to grow. After we reached that $100,000 mark in 2016, we kept giving, but our giving became a little bit more systematic. We tried to make sure each of the different regions of the world were covered somewhat equally in our giving. We would rotate our giving to different countries throughout the globe, and so things began to even out a bit. But it was typically just one or two small projects, less than $5,000 each most of the time, and that would take place for these several years since 2016. We've done our best to collect before and after pictures. A lot of those are on our Facebook page if you want to check those out. But probably one of the most exciting ones we did was in 2019 in Papua New Guinea. They were in great need of water. Their dry season, they would have to lock down all the water and ration it out in the evening for the students to be able to drink. There was no water allotted for washing clothes, bathing, showering, use of toilets, sinks, none of that. Just enough for them to be able to drink some water in the evening. Obviously a very serious need. But there was good news that they had plenty of water underground. They just needed to tap into it with a pump. And so we were able to provide that need for them. Both Pat and I were working at a water filtration company at that time, so it was very exciting for us to be able to meet that need and to be able to, get clean water to them to where they could be able to take care of their students all year long, even through that dry need. So having given over $150,000 in 28 different countries, we came to the conclusion or decision that we would begin to save up and do a bigger project rather than the small projects. And so going forward, we're going to plan to see what we can't do on a bigger scale. Thankfully, we were able to host the Carvers, missionaries to Papua New Guinea, this past April, and they were able to share with us the great success that they've had there in that country over these last several years since the water project that we did with them, and that they shared with us a great need that we believe we're going to be able to meet. And I'm going to go into that in more detail in another video, but for now we're trying to keep these for sure under 20 minutes. So I'm going to wrap this one up for now, knowing that we've now covered our foundation, the early years, and from the early years to this point. So I say to you, thank you for watching. We appreciate your support for this cause. Like I said, check out our Facebook page. You can see the pictures, find out more information about the organization. And if you're so inclined, please subscribe to our channel here and click on the bell so you could get our videos notification. God bless you all.